there is almost certainly an unprecedented number of registered Republicans are voting Democrat for the first time. And that isn't wishful thinking. They are standing up and announcing it on a daily basis. We're seeing really senior Republican leadership of the level of Dick and Liz Cheney, which everybody's seen, but not just them. Daily, there are, Republican stalwarts standing up all over the country saying, we haven't voted for Trump, or we're not going to vote for Trump this time.
Good evening. Hannah McInnes here on Times Radio. And by this time next week, we may know who will be the next president of the United States. Though while the election takes place in only 3 days' time, the drama and uncertainty could continue for much longer than that. And confirmation of the result may take weeks. Polls suggest the race remains tight, with a new exclusive Times poll out showing that Kamala Harris is ahead in the 3 key states of Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Well, let's take the pulse now with Sarah Churchwell, Professor of American Literature and Public Understanding of the Humanities at the University of London, and also author of a number of brilliant books, including The Wrath to Come, Gone with the Wind and The Lies America Tells. Good evening, Sarah.
Hi, Anna.
Well, what is your sense first, I suppose, reacting? There's a very recent now Times poll showing that Kamala Harris, as I say, is ahead in 3 key states, Michigan, Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. What does that mean, do you think?
Well, what we're seeing is early votes, obviously, right? Now, the key thing here is to recognize that the votes aren't all being counted. Some of these are being extrapolated from the registration of the voters that have been, or the votes that have been sent in, right? So what they're doing is they're assessing the fact that registered Republicans have voted at X number, registered Democrats have voted in X number, but not actually yet read the ballots in question. So what we're seeing is that already in early votes, just among registered voters, we're seeing that the Democrats are having a strong advantage, as your poll suggests, as other polls are suggesting as well. But we also know that in this election, there is almost certainly an unprecedented number of registered Republicans are voting Democrat for the first time. And that isn't wishful thinking. They are standing up and announcing it on a daily basis. We're seeing really senior Republican leadership of the level of Dick and Liz Cheney, which everybody's seen, but not just them. Daily, there are, Republican stalwarts standing up all over the country saying, we haven't voted for Trump, or we're not going to vote for Trump this time. So we don't know how many of those officially registered Republican votes are actually going to flip when the votes are counted. So if on the basis of registered votes, she already has what looks like a lead, then we start to extrapolate from that it might be a more commanding lead. Now, that's all just early votes. So people are going to show up in person and vote on Tuesday, and they will close the gap, and they may overcome some of these gaps. So none of this is by any means set in stone, but the trends are encouraging for the Democrats right now.
So do you sort of raise an eyebrow at the polls suggesting that, again and again, that it's neck and neck, that it's incredibly tight, that it's so close? Do you think that that's not necessarily entirely accurate?
Well, I've actually been looking at what the pollsters themselves are saying. And for example, G. Elliott Morris, who now does 538, which of course used to be Nate Silver, but is now Elliott Morris. And he literally said a couple of days ago, he put on social media, I'm begging you all to understand that high levels of uncertainty is not the same as a close result. And a number of pollsters have been saying this. What they're saying is we have very high levels of uncertainty, partly because of the situation that I just described. There are other reasons as well. So it could be a close result. And certainly, I don't think anybody's predicting a landslide or a blowout. But a lot of people are saying that we might see something on the order of, say, 4 points, which is what Biden won by in 2020 and what Obama won by in 2012, which is a comfortable win. It's not a blowout, but it is a solid and comfortable win. And these polls do not in any way, obviate that potential outcome.
Who do you think are the ones to watch then? I mean, we've hear a lot about young women. Kamala Harris has been endlessly appealing to young women. Do you think that they could have a significant impact on this vote?
I don't think there's any question that they're going to have a significant impact on this vote. Certainly women across the board are going to. Women are the electoral majority in the United States, but have never voted as a bloc. They've always split along various class and racial lines. If we see for the first time in a presidential election in the United States women voting and they won't obviously vote in unison. I'm not suggesting that. But if you actually have a majority of women voting, to swing things to Harris, what we will see is, whether they're young women or not young women, what we're seeing is a huge gender gap across these pivotal battleground states. So at the moment, again, we're looking only at early votes, but at the moment in Pennsylvania, women, last report I saw was that women are ahead of men by 13 points in the early vote. Georgia, they're up by 12 points in the last numbers I saw. Nationwide, they're up by 10 points overall in the early vote. Now, again, this is just saying that more women than men are voting. So we're extrapolating from that, but it is very difficult to imagine women coming out in droves 2 years after the reversal of Roe v. Wade in order to vote for Trump. That is not the motivating emotion here. And what we are seeing, I think almost certainly, is a reaction to the earthquake that was the Dobbs decision 2 years ago, and women coming out in very, very large numbers. And the question is, are men who are Trump supporters, because of course there are plenty of men who are also supporting reproductive freedoms and voting along those lines, but are the men who the Trump campaign is trying to get out, who are men who tend not to vote, who are men who are either first-time voters or what they call low propensity voters, so the irregular voters, are they going to get off the sofa and vote for Trump on election day when you've got these highly motivated, highly organized women who are turning out around the country? And so far, again, I think that that's a trend that clearly the Harris campaign feels positive about.
Yes, and you've also got this interesting story, haven't you, overnight, really? Julia Roberts voicing this advert saying you don't have to vote the way your husband votes, to supposedly conservative Republican voting women, married couples. I don't know, do these things have an impact? I know that it's really annoyed and angered a lot of conservative women, this tape.
Well, it's also annoyed and angered a lot of conservative men who were on the right-wing media sphere last night, triggered by this, literally saying, I mean, they responded, Charlie Kirk and Jesse Waters, who's a Fox News anchor, and Charlie Kirk, of course, a highly placed Trump surrogate, both were saying that women should not vote in ways that their husbands wouldn't approve of, if you can believe it. They were shouting that women should vote as their husbands tell them to, and that the ad was appalling because it was suggesting that women could or should vote in secret, although that is in fact a constitutional right that all American women have, which is to keep their vote secret like everyone else. So they were kind of proving the ad's point. It's also been anecdotally upheld by now this is anecdotal, as I say, but by volunteers who've been phone banking and door knocking, and they're reporting on social media that they have had this experience where they knock on a door to try to speak to a woman, or pick up the phone, and a man answers and says, "This is Republican House and you're not talking to the woman here." Now, this is anecdotal, but there are a lot of reports coming out like this. So it suggests that, and there was a Georgia politician who responded to the right-wing kind of callback last night, saying that he is aware of what they're calling a whispering campaign, and he was defending it. Women's right to vote as they see fit, as their consciences and their, political decisions, lead them to do. And he was absolutely defending the right to do that, and good for him. But he was saying that he believes there to be what they're calling this whispering campaign, which is what the Julia Roberts ad is about, is women whispering to each other, it's okay to vote for Harris if you want to, even if you're in a Trump area or a Trump household.
Really interesting. Now, this is an unfair question to fit into a small amount of time, but I started off by saying this time next week we may or may not know. Do you have any idea or what are your thoughts about how quickly this result will be known?
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows. I think we can be, I'm sorry to say to everybody who wants to have a feeling that there will be a clear outcome on Tuesday night. It's possible, but we would need something more like a blowout for that to happen. We would have to have very clear outcomes. Pennsylvania is, as you already implied, is one of the really key states, as I think most people watching the election realize. It's got 19 electoral votes to play for. It's a tight race right now, although women are ahead in it, which is good news for those of us who want, and I'm going to be very clear that I am supporting Harris in this campaign. But the Pennsylvania's electoral rules are such that they can't start counting until the day. And so they're unlikely to be able to come back with a total that is, robust and that they're confident that they can make predictions on the basis of. So if, she sweeps all the other swing states, for example, or but for that matter, if Trump does, then yes, there are routes to victory for both of them that don't involve Pennsylvania, for example. So it's not impossible, but it's unlikely. And I think my guess is that we're going to be looking at something more like 2020, which, as people may remember, was called on the Saturday after the Tuesday election.
I remember it very, very well. A lot of people didn't sleep, I don't think, for about 4 days just tuning in. Sarah Churchwell, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio.